All right, let's go ahead and get started. We want to welcome everyone to our LeanData Customer Spotlight webinar. And if you're new to these, this is where we highlight real life LeanData admins, not AI folks. These are real people who are working in sales, marketing, revenue operations, and roles very similar to, I'm assuming, many of yours, and how they are going about improving their go-to-market processes. So the goal of these sessions is really to provide a way for all of our LeanData users to learn from other LeanData users, whether it's to gain inspiration, so that everyone can up-level together with what you're doing with LeanData and with your go-to-market processes. Now, before we jump into our guest today, I'd like to cover just a few housekeeping administrative items. Firstly, we will be recording this session, so don't worry if there's something that you miss. You'll be able to go back and review those things later on, and we'll send out a recording of this conversation. And secondly, we encourage you to interact with us. Use the chat feature to engage with anything that you hear that you find really interesting. Also, if you have any questions, there should be a Q&A panel that you can utilize as well. And I can't promise that we'll get to all of the questions today, but we'll do our best to incorporate them and then follow up as appropriate. Now, today's conversation, I think, is going to touch on a question that a lot of RevOps teams are wrestling with. And that's, how do you scale and evolve your go-to-market motion? It's always changing, but you don't necessarily want to duplicate your effort across just a growing number of tools. And our guests today have built something really compelling at Tealium, and I think you're going to walk away with some practical ideas. So let's go ahead and bring our guests on for today. That will be Jake and John. So once they come on stage here, I'll ask you guys to introduce yourselves and your role at Tealium. So let's maybe get started with Jake, and then we can move on to John.
Yeah, I'm our director of revenue systems. So I own everything kind of Salesforce related and the tools that kind of integrate with it to make sure that it works. So really overseeing the technical building side of like the LeanData piece as well is kind of like my area.
Yeah, and so I'm the director of marketing operations, and I kind of deal with a lot of the technical setup on the front end of that. And so Jake and I deal with each other a lot in terms of sales to marketing handoff and things like that. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. And, I think you guys are a little bit unique in that your experience with LeanData has been pretty long running. You've been using the platform for 6 years. So you kind of implemented these things as they've come out. So really looking forward to hearing your perspective on these things.
Yeah, just a fun little story there. Jake and I have actually worked together at the past 3 companies together, and we brought LeanData in at like each one of them. So we have a pretty good understanding and philosophy of like how we like to do things together with it.
Not to date ourselves, but it's been longer than 6 years.
Yeah.
We certainly appreciate it. All right. There's a lot of things we could talk about today, guys. But initially we reached out because we were really interested in what you're doing around AI SDRs and AI chat agents. And we still do want to talk about that. But, as we had our initial discussions, I learned that this new and shiny AI SDR story is just kind of the tip of the iceberg around what you've been building over the past, 6 years with LeanData. So today we'll start off talking more about the foundation, centralized routing as the go-to-market backbone of all of your processes. And then we'll move into the model. And you guys mentioned that building a contacts first approach was a really important aspect of that. So we'll talk about that as well. And then we want to do is sort of expand that to your experience with expanding to scheduling and using Bookit, and specifically to capture the high intent moments on your website. And then I think the meat of what we want to talk about as far as the innovation aspect of it. And I think what folks want to hear about is how you incorporated this AI SDR motion into your overall processes. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, I think it'd be helpful to kind of take a step back. And not everyone here has had that 6 years to build that foundation, but there has been a through line and a philosophy and an approach that I think is going to be applicable for everyone. And that'll give us some practical takeaways there. So let's go ahead and jump into it. We'll start off with the foundation, and that is really centralized routing as the backbone of your go-to-market processes. So maybe, John, I'll have you talk about this first. this very deliberate philosophy around centralized routing.
Yeah, and I think like that philosophy goes deeper than just routing for us. It's like centralized management for all things. It just, as an ops minded person, anytime you have to make changes, like centralized management allows you to make that change once, and everything that's calling into that applies immediately, instead of every workflow has a routing rule, then all of a sudden you're changing thousands of workflows at once, and it just becomes a pain in the butt. And so we kind of just got ahead of that, and thanked our future selves for being able to just make that easier on ourselves going forward. And it's the only way to truly scale. You'll just get stuck in tech debt if you don't.
Yeah, could you tell us maybe a little bit about your consolidating around LeanData specifically as a platform for that?
Yeah, and Jake might want to talk to this one a little bit too, but with LeanData specifically, we just wanted to have a centralized place where we could have everyone go to the right people, and there's really no sense to us to have that be different for any rule or scenario. Like, we built it all into one workflow, so it is a more complicated workflow, but it answers all the questions in one place, and that way, when you have to make that change, it's all in one place. It is reflected anywhere any scenario happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake, from your end, having to work in and deal with, moving things around on the platform, what is it about the LeanData platform that has really allowed you guys to build on top of that?
I mean, I think first and foremost is like the lead to account matching. Like, that's the biggest component and value add, like just foundationally, especially when we're, an ABM centric company. Being able to take the leads that come in and automatically like match and associate them to accounts helps a lot with like the attribution and like making sure the right people get to the right reps or SDRs or whatever. And that lets us really kind of like force that function and let us kind of work in more of a contact centric approach, because it helps keep the processes the same, where creating opportunities from contacts. So we have like the contact added to the opportunity so we can track who we're working with. And also LeanData, having everything centralized helps it so all of our object routings that we do can all be handled there as well.
And it seems like it was a really important matter for you guys to ensure that all of that was not duplicated across different systems. And as any ops team knows, tools will kind of come and go. And over the years, I'm sure you guys have seen your fair share of that. But could you tell us a little bit around why that was so important for you guys and the benefits that you've experienced from it? And either one of you can respond to that one.
Yeah, we've had some past tools where we like couldn't necessarily like leverage LeanData's routing for all aspects of how they would handle routing on like the front end of the website before it even came to Salesforce. And anytime there's a change, you now have to go remember to like go update it in another place. And what's nice about that centralized management is it's kind of like set and forget. Like, that is the source of truth. You don't have to remember that like there's a checklist of updates to have to go make somewhere. And I think that's where it's just been like the reliability is much higher than it was anywhere else, because that is where, like, if there's a routing issue, it is in one place. It's not let's go peel back the hood on 3 different places where routing could be happening.
Yeah, definitely the ease of management is so much easier with like the visual UI and the graphs. Like, making changes, like, oh, I want it to go to the AE if it's an existing customer, is so much easier than having to try and update a flow or any other sort of like logic too.
Yeah. Well, and also just the auditing that LeanData has, I think, is really helpful for troubleshooting too. You can see how, like, an exact record, like what node it like went through to find out, oh, like that's not where I want that to be firing that way, but now I know where the issue is. I can go adjust that.
Yeah. Definitely. And, with that change management aspect of things that you guys touched on, I think that's so huge to be able to be confident as far as, hey, I'm going to make this change. I can see what's happening. I can see what's going on. I can understand it. And that expands to more than just you guys too. If you're able to explain and show to your stakeholders organizationally and they can understand it, that goes a long way in being able to iterate and build quickly. Okay. Awesome. Well, you guys kind of already started touching upon this, but oh, you had something else to say there? Okay. I think I just heard some background noise, but let's talk a little bit about this building a contacts first approach. So I don't think you guys are necessarily unique in this aspect, but I certainly want to hear about, why that was so important to you and how it was a decision that really helped you to kind of have a direction and to build on top of that, and all the other technologies you want to layer on top have really benefited from this decision. So could you talk us through that thought process and how you ended up there?
Yeah, I think there's like a handful of benefits here that really kind of helped usher this as like the general practice. Obviously, like with report types, it's easier to have, contact reports, anything like that. There were moments where we were missing leads and, SDR views or anything like that going on. As Jake said too, the ABM plays really help with the contact first approach, because the contacts will inherit any of those account level fields. And so if we're managing accounts, it's kind of that like centralized management all over again. As soon as we change it on the account, all contacts get that value. And so when we're trying to go after accounts with a certain criteria and the contacts that reflect that, it's much easier targeting to be able to do that versus every lead is its own company, even though that could be the account. You now have to go make sure that like, oh, well, if it's, Acme Corp over here on record A versus Acme Corp on record B, making sure that that's all up to date is nearly impossible. And you're going to start to see kind of some blurred lines of what truly Acme Corp is, instead of having Acme Corp be the account that you manage and then have everything live on that. It's way cleaner and way better data to activate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly from a reporting standpoint, having that comprehensive view of things certainly helps. Jake, anything to add on there? I know that you may have had a hand in both building and maintaining a lot of this. I do have a modified version of your graph that I could share as well. So I don't know if that's going to something that you could kind of walk through and some of the choices that were made here.
Yeah. So what's really nice is you can like check if, well, one, if they're a hand raiser versus just kind of MQLing through just like the normal life cycle. And depending on which path it's coming from, you can treat things very different. I know our first pass is like, hey, does this lead match an account? If so, like convert it. And what's nice is you can get very granular with like the accounts you're matching against, especially if you're dealing with a large company that have a lot of like subsidiaries. You can narrow it down to be, using the country as a tiebreaker, right, for instance. So that makes things a lot more cleaner. And then just like the duplicate handling as well. If there's already a duplicate lead, if there's a duplicate contact, being able to handle that. And then also being able to like send Slack alerts. I know it's not showing up here, but I know Slack integration is out of the box and pretty intuitive to use. And yeah, just being able to activate on so many different conditions. If it's a customer or if it's a prospect, tier 1 versus not an ICP. So it makes it very easy to like make those distinctions and handle it how you like.
One thing to maybe touch on here that's, I think, kind of maybe a little debatable on like philosophy, that some people don't want to like route a record to like an SDR or an AE until it MQLs, right? It has to be like ready to talk. We route at creation, and that like lives with that person. It, especially at like the ABM level, that gives you like a way better insights into what's happening at the account. Like those little engagements, if 5 to 10 people at an account are doing small things, like that is like kind of an intent signal that you might want to like look into a bit more and curate follow-up to that. But we don't have any like expectation of follow-up until any of those records like reach an MQL, and we alert off of that. So while it might be assigned, there is like no action needed until like it hits certain like thresholds. And I think that's been really helpful for the SDRs to get that picture of what's going on at the account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want the visibility there. I appreciate the ABM approach towards that. But I'm just curious, what do you guys do when leads don't match to an account? I know that we were doing a contacts first model, but are there situations where you might want to keep things as leads, and how do you handle that?
Yeah, we've gone back and forth on what to do there. Right now, we're in the monitor the leads that come through, and if there's a reason it's not converting to the account, kind of fix that. But we haven't gone to auto creation of accounts just because of potential duplicates or just like the maintenance that would cause on just the nuances. And so that's something we might explore in the future. But for right now, we're keeping it just very clean with the known accounts and working off of that.
Okay. Now, Jake, anything to add from your end as far as things that you've tried with unmatched leads and how to deal with that?
Nothing more. It's more like just that human in the loop, like what edge cases are there that we're not considering, but I mean, it's been working kind of the way we have it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
One thing to add there, maybe, sorry, real quick, is just the leads still get assigned to the SDR. So that is kind of like the human in the loop that they can kind of manually convert things to an account if needed. But ideally, we're automating as much of this as possible.
Right. So the visibility is still there if they want it.
Yeah,
but it's just not an expectation of a follow-up and an action as of yet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and start talking about, you built out this strong foundation for routing and looking for duplicates and conversion. So having this ABM centric contacts first model, but then comes in this idea of scheduling and book it. So if you could tell us a little bit about what happens when someone raises their hand on your website, and then how did book it enter the conversation there?
Yeah, so part of that was just reducing friction at all costs and giving time back to the SDR. So like better experience and more efficiency are kind of just like in our DNA, I think. And so for us, it was kind of a no-brainer to take the SDR element of like someone fills out a form saying they want a demo, and then the SDR has to follow up like within 24 hours to say yes, like let's schedule that time. What time are you available? And it's 2-3 days go by, if someone's busy during the week, you lose out on that opportunity. And so we were just like, it's a no-brainer to be like, just book the time when you're ready. We do only do this for tier 1 and tier 2 ICP focus accounts, ensuring that there's a quality metric, so some student isn't booking time with an AE to just learn more about our product.
Yeah, I think that was kind of an interesting thought to me, that this utilizing Book It was more of a play on improving the user experience, and it wasn't so much like a volume play, but like a quality play. And I do appreciate that particular approach. So when you're doing that, what do you consider like successful, right? How do you know that what we're doing here is something that's worth doing, pursuing, that it was a success, versus something that maybe you will want to step back from?
Yeah, I mean, doing it wasn't that hard, like implementing the code and like getting that all stood up. So it was kind of like just do the right thing and trust the process a bit. And so part of our like brand is to create like good experiences with like good data. And so that kind of just led into like what we're trying to preach as our own brand, to be like, create a good experience. We know they're a good account, like curate that experience for them to remove friction where possible.
Yeah. I do believe we have, we do have a screenshot of your actual processes around demo requests that come to your website. And this is actually fairly true to exactly how it's configured in your instance. So maybe, Jake, if you can walk us through some of the aspects of this and why those decisions were made for how this was set up.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, always deduping first is kind of a best practice. So that's kind of what we do. Like, are they a duplicate contact already? If they aren't, just trying to follow the graph. If they're not, then see if they're an account. And then if they match the account, like evaluate whether it's an ICP tier 1 or 2, or if they're a customer or not. And we kind of do that so we're not as John mentioned, blowing up our calendars of people who are actually trying to like take meetings. And so the top right corner and the bottom right corner are basically doing the same exact thing. It's just, is one based off a duplicate contact versus it being matched to an account. Mm-hmm. And it's the same logic and feeds the same result ultimately. If they don't match or they're not qualified, that just takes them to like our thank you page for filling out the form, and like probably the SDR will get the traditional hand raiser approach where they'll reach out or they'll validate the account and the company, see if it's worth taking a time, making sure it's not like an intern, or if it is an intern, like is it a quality intern or not? So we let that human in the loop, but if it goes any of the other routes, we determine whether it goes to like the SDR and the account owner, or if it's a customer, if it goes to the CSM and the account owner, and it'll show like the respective times that are available with both calendars taken into account. And it'll allow them to schedule right there. The way I view book it as being a success is like, how many meetings can we create without an internal person having to do a back and forth dialogue? Sure. And just someone wants a demo and they're a qualified person, like book time. We have the technology to show our calendar. Like we don't need to do the back and forth. So that is kind of like how I view the success for this tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that we can also kind of see that the logic here is so simple because you're highly focused, right, on those high intent moments and making sure the experience is rock solid for those folks. So yeah, this isn't sort of captured on the screenshot or anything like that, but are you guys using Book It links as well? That's sort of a additional Book It product that we have where folks can send a link and folks can click it and then book a meeting that way. Is that something that you guys are utilizing too, and for what?
Yeah, we are using those in some places with plans to kind of roll it out for more. So within like our agentic, like if we know who they are, like giving them that link to book instead of even like sending the form, like that's what we're moving towards. It's not necessarily like live just yet, but stay tuned, that will be. And then sometimes like within our product, if there's like a CSM like meeting button somewhere, like they can just book time with their CSM like right there. So we're doing a handful of different plays with it.
Mm-hmm. And is that more just a function of, hey, you've got LeanData Book It, they've got this links feature, so we can use that, or are there any sort of differentiators there that you guys are aware of that really benefit from using LeanData for this process?
So the one thing I really like about the links piece is you have a lot more functionality with kind of building the URL to add additional hosts, where in other platforms you can't really do that. If you're trying to like formulate the URL booking link, you can only have like one person as the host. Where if you want to send it to like the CSM and the AE or include like the SDR, you can just hard code that, reference like the person's user ID, and you just have so much more flexibility over what calendars to include.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
The sophistication of that link builder like really does change like how you can use those links and for what reasons. And so like being able to have an AE or CSM during like depending on the situation or the offer going out, like that is such a differentiator for that, the value there.
Yeah, and I think for most teams here, a lot of those external meetings would require more than a single host from your side. So I just see that as inherently limiting as far as, okay, I've sent this link out for myself, but I still need to do the work of finding the availability for someone else and then doing the back and forth. So that kind of defeats the whole purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered the foundation, this idea of centralized routing, contacts first, and then now this expanding the use cases to include scheduling and Book It. But now I think what is perhaps most exciting for folks and what they want to hear about is this innovation part of their story, where one that is, as you talked about, is evolving as we speak. You guys have been one of the first to connect an AI SDR agent with LeanData scheduling, and you've done it without just completely upending your whole buyer journey, which I think is really key. So let's dig into that. I believe you guys are using OneMind. So what was the genesis of this initiative to use AI SDRs, and what made you think about connecting it with LeanData in the first place?
I think kind of beating the drum on our philosophy of just reducing friction. Like if someone wants to meet, like we hate forms. Like really is what it comes down to. Is like if we don't need to ask for the information, like we shouldn't be asking for it. And that I think is like kind of part of like the Tealium DNA is like know your person and create a good experience. And so to the point of like it's in product and it's like get time with your CSM. Like don't ask them to fill out a form if you know who they are logging into your product. Like give them that like experience because we know who you are. That was a long-winded tangent, but we were on Drift. It was a lot more rule-based conversations, and we wanted to move to something that was much more sophisticated, smarter, could answer questions, and have it be truly conversational. Like I think the whole AI initiative right now is to make marketing much more conversational, and that's like in email, in the web personalization, everything you're doing is conversational. And what better way to do that than to actually have something you can like have a conversation with? And so that was kind of the genesis, I think, for going to something like OneMind, where any question can be asked and not have it be like predicted, blocks of text that you're asking like specific questions and trying to like guide them down that journey. They can ask it in their own language exactly what they want. And the brain behind it is so sophisticated, and being able to truly answer those questions the way it wants. And that's been really great. To then layer in, the demo piece, it's like, it can answer everything up to that point. It can't like necessarily do the subject matter expert opportunity creation that we're trying to do. And so that's where we started to be like, okay, like how do we get them to the next step? How do we make that easy for them, reduce friction to get the highest output? That's where we're doing the links or the form to really help kind of take that next step easily in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I'm not entirely familiar with all of the capabilities of OneMind, but are there native booking capabilities that you would have? I'd imagine that's something that folks want to add there. So why bring LeanData into it at all? Aren't there some existing capabilities that you can leverage to already do what you want to do there?
So my understanding is that they have integrations with other tools, but they don't have their own native like booking calendar link. And again, our philosophy is always like centralize that. Like when we had Drift before, we had to manage that routing externally because it didn't necessarily like it was assigning it to the person that would be on like their behalf before it even hit Salesforce because it was just an anonymous record. But if a new SDR got started and we didn't like update the routing rules, it was off in one place and right in the other place. And so like LeanData being that source of truth is like the drum we're really trying to beat is like that's where we manage it, and we don't have to think about anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jake, you've been sort of at the forefront of this, setting things up there. Could you tell us a little bit about the details of how this is set up and how you ended where you are? And if I could share this, it looks very familiar, the processes around this. So could you tell us a little bit about how things are set up for routing with AI agents and scheduling?
I mean, we had routing already built. So why not plug in what we currently use already? Like someone comes in, we need to figure out, do we know them? Are they a customer or not? Are they a high intent person? So plugging into something we already built saves me time. I think a good ops person is lazy. So they try to like find out ways to build things as quick as they can without having to reinvent the wheel every time.
Yeah.
So if we can plug in something that we've already built that works, that flows the way we want it to flow, and it's one audit path. So that was kind of the point of going this route was we have it built, let's reuse what we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that goes back to that well, again, I feel like we're repeating this over and over and over again, but that philosophy of centralized routing, and since you have that, you're just leveraging all the input that's already been, intaking for a number of years now, and just adding more ways to leverage that and really gaining your processes that way. So certainly appreciate that. Um, Now I know that this is kind of like a newer initiative. Are there thoughts about where you want to take this and what you want to do with it, and sort of like the next step in your overall vision? Because I don't assume that this is sort of the last stop and everything is going to be no more development, no more innovation after this. So where do you see things going from here with regards to AI agents and scheduling?
Yeah, I think we're kind of just tip of the iceberg, just getting started with what we can do here. I think one thing for the AI agents specifically that we'd like to get to is more on-page context, like feeding more activity of like, hey, this person's visited, these 3 pages, they might be interested in an AI solution, like training the agent to then intro with an AI themed message instead of it just being the generic, hi, I'm here to help. Like, how can I help you? Kind of start,
Mm-hmm.
listening for signals to then create that conversational start will help a lot. And then from the booking side of things, I think, there's more friction we could remove. It's not like 100% where it could be in terms of certain things. And, the more we get to know people, the more enrichment we're trying to do on anonymous visitors, like we could start to potentially get that right calendar in front of someone before we even know who they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about like other parts of the overall, life cycle of, prospect to customer? I think we're dealing a lot with maybe sort of the initial demo requests that come in and things like that. But is there a vision for maybe further down the line in the life cycle and ways that you can leverage AI SDRs and even scheduling
Yeah.
around that?
Yeah, there's a lot we want to do on like kind of the customer side of things. That's probably like the bigger thing to tackle next. And really, making it a bit an assistant like within our product, kind of being able to queue up like the documentation or knowledge base and really be like, how do I set up this connector? And all of a sudden like that could just be voice prompted and it can help kind of guide you how to do that. Like that's definitely where we want to go next with OneLine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can definitely see that even connecting with, hey, if things are not quite resolvable, in that
Yeah,
initial AI conversation, you have an option to book a meeting with one of the support agents who's familiar with your account, that type of thing. So yeah,
yeah,
even taking it that way.
totally.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys for sharing that. And I don't assume that this is, the last we'll talk about this. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more that you guys do. And even as LeanData iterates on our ability to, add more features and functions to what the needs are around AI and AI agents, certainly we want to discuss that. So I do want to take a little bit of a step back. We've kind of gotten a little bit into the weeds, which is good. We want to hear how you guys are doing that. But like I mentioned at the beginning, not everyone has had 6 years to build out this foundation and are in the place where you guys are. Now, there is a through line as far as an underlying philosophy, and we kind of been referring to that as we've been going through, but maybe to crystallize that a little bit more, what are some of the key themes and the key approaches and philosophies that you've had as you build out your processes?
I'd say the main thing is ship and iterate. Like, get an MVP out. Like, you're not going to be able to boil the ocean. If you try, it's just going to take longer and longer to get time to value. So start with like the bare bones of what you need to like just get up and running, and just make changes, do small improvements over time, and you'll get there. That would be the biggest kind of takeaway from how we kind of like operate, is go fast and just update along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to echo that, like whatever project or initiative you're working on, like any incremental improvement is an improvement. And it's more
Yeah.
important to get that out as soon as possible, like speed over, perfection. Because you'll never get it live if you try to get it perfect with everything. And, there will always be issues that you can't even predict until you see it in the real world. And so getting that 80% good or 20% better, like just getting it out will definitely help a lot.
Mm-hmm. Can you guys comment about that second point we have on the slide here, just user experience being the North Star there? Because you can kind of get lost as far as, oh, we want to do all of these things, and then that quickly complicates thing, and the speed at which you are talking about sort of gets lost along the way. So could you talk about that second point?
Yeah, I think putting the customer first is really like part of just like the Tealium ethos of creating a good experience. And it is more important to like get that person to have a good experience and want to take a call with you than it is to get every detail that you want out of them. And sometimes it's like accepting that it isn't like, we've had conversations internally about like asking them a question on how they heard about us. And it's like, well, that's friction. That's another thing we have to ask them versus like just trusting the process, doing the right things and letting them come to you and take that meeting. And, at the end of the day, if they're booking with you, like that's the end goal. So don't worry about the little details, create that good experience and trust the process.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about this already, but that ideal of scaling without duplication, any additional comments on, why that's such a core and important philosophy to abide by?
Yeah, I think it's the only way to scale and be efficient. If you have to duplicate efforts, like again, it's kind of like the SDR spending time going back and forth to schedule the meeting instead of focusing on like outbounding with other initiatives, and giving time back wherever you can is how a team of two are going to act like a team of four. Is if we can kind of carve out all these little efficiency gains, those individuals have a lot more time to go work on more productive shipping and iterating initiatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jake, from your end, what are some of the learnings from being one of the first movers as far as connecting like a AI chat agent with LeanData? So either technically, what are some of the learnings, or organizationally, what are some of the learnings there? Because you don't have the benefit of having a blueprint that someone else has made all the mistakes for you and you can kind of copy. So you kind of are that blueprint, or you're making that. So what are some tips and recommendations for folks who want to build out something similar at their organizations?
Contact your CSM, because that's what we've had to do, and they've been extremely helpful with, debugging, troubleshooting with us, like being very helpful. The other thing that is also helpful that you can control is knowing what the bare minimum is. Like, how do we want to treat these situations? Because I find a lot of times projects or initiatives get delayed because of indecision. Mm-hmm. So just knowing like what is like the basic functionality we want and like the user experience you want with it, and work with your CSM to figure out like, how do we make this work? Like, this is what we're trying to do. And obviously having the experts guide you along the way helps a lot.
Yeah.
I think we've also kind of like taught them some things with how we can leverage the product too, which is nice.
Yeah, that's great. It's definitely a two-way learning, especially when we're dealing with new territory that not a whole lot of folks have been involved with as of yet. But I think a lot of people want to get there. So I appreciate working with you guys on a lot of these things. We kind of already talked a little bit about where you want to take the agentic AI thing, but what else? Whether it's regarding using AI in those processes or not, what's sort of next for Tealium? Where do you want to go? What are some processes that you're looking to expand out? We'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I think we're leaning deep into AI right now, not just in like the agentic like chatbot, but like back-end workflows, assessing data, like taking massive transcripts and boiling down, key takeaways. And, we're working on some really interesting like product messaging docs right now, and kind of turning that into an agent for email sends and all sorts of different things we could do with it. So pretty much any way you can leverage AI, that's really where we're leaning in right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think another thing as it pertains to LeanData, at least, is the routing links. So it's kind of like the book it for forms, but you can just have it as a link versus like a button. using that functionality and providing more of like a, hey, look here, whether it's from like a Marketo email or, I mean, really a Marketo email. And having that same functionality be used just in like a link form. And
Yeah.
being dynamic and intentional with that.
Yeah.
The routing links are really helpful when you don't know like everything you need to know for like the bucket link to work. That's kind of like a very nice like supplemental like plan B, the way we see it. A lot of things like we could put that link somewhere and be like complete the information that we need from you in order to get the right calendar to show up. And so that's been a really cool experience as well. And I think everything we're trying to do is create better experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. For those folks who are on the call who may not be familiar with routing links, because it's fairly new, just within the past few months or so that we've come out with that. And I appreciate that you guys are already starting to think about how this very new functionality is going to fit into your processes. I love that. And it kind of echoes the ethos that you've been speaking to up until this point, but essentially allows you to use the logic of a FlowBuilder routing graph, which you guys have already built and established, and then access that through the convenience and the flexibility of a link that you can just send out. So it's kind of the best of both worlds there. And it certainly speaks to the user experience aspect of things. And not only user experience, I would say that, how easy is it for your SDRs or your folks to send in a link versus like, hey, here's a, go to our website and, open up this form and you can fill out this form and then I'll get it that way. So it's much easier just to include that link there. Okay.
Totally.
All right. Well, we are close to time, John and Jake. So thank you so much for taking the time to share with us. I'm sure there are a lot of things that our attendees picked up that they can implement and use. And I love the pioneering work that you guys are doing with connecting AI with your routing platform, and hope to hear more about that in the future. Well, everyone on the call, thank you for attending. Apologies if we weren't able to get to all of your questions, but we'll take a look at what we weren't able to get to and follow up if appropriate. So you can be on the lookout for a follow-up email where we'll share the recording for this session, and we'll let you know once that's ready. But once again, thanks to everyone. Thanks to Jake and John from the Tealium team. We'll be signing off now, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.